I haven't seen any violence happening at protests, so I don't even know why this is a question. Nobody is advocating for violent protests, and nobody's saying
would it
that
be
that's
justified?
acceptable, including myself.
Would it be justified?
I just answered that. You're just repeating the same question. I feel like you're being disingenuous
Well, you didn't answer
when I've already made this
You didn't
clear.
answer if it would be justified.
I just said it's not acceptable. How could it be justified?
Right. So
The only violence that we see being unleashed, which is completely unacceptable, is by the NYPD, who have maced protesters. They maced people at NYU, which I saw with my own eyes.
They
maced
actually
people
went
at
and
CUNY
threw out.
last night. They whipped out their batons. They
Right.
beat people until they bled. People got punched in the face. They were bleeding from their teeth. You know, this is the violence that's completely unacceptable.
That's because a howling
violent
violent mob chanting Intifada broke in.
You see how this motherfucker? It's not a mob. You see how we Arabs and Muslims in America, we have been dealing with this for 50, 60 years. If you go to watch a movie, the Arab guy is a terrorist. If you go any place, they demonize the Palestinian, they demonize our religion, they put this fear of Muslims, the Islamic extremists. They do everything they can to destroy our image within our community, within our ecosystem of American citizens. We've been trying so hard, and we finally made it, thank God. I know it came on a bad way, but the United States has awakened. The Israeli and Jewish lobbies and Israeli and Jewish media, it's Jewish media, fuck it, I'm going to say it like it is. The United States media is influenced by Jewish Americans and Jewish billionaires. And they even threatened Colombia, like Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriot. He threatened Columbia University. He's not going to give them money because the students are protesting for the people in Gaza. Look at the fucking chutzpah, I'm going to say it in the language, that the idea of thinking. So he refuses to hear her. He just brings her in. The only reason he brings her in is because she wears a hijab, and he gets to say whatever he wants and score points. You know, listen, guy, you see, I did good today. I was calling them a mob. I called them terrorists. As I said, the Intifada was a dirty word. Look what I'm doing. Look, I'm doing this for you. He's not listening to her. He didn't bring her here to listen to her opinion. He never thought. Do you think he brought that girl in to listen to her opinion? He just brought her there as a prop so he could spit, he could have diarrhea from his fucking mouth the whole time. That's all he did. Good.
Into an historic building on a private property. It's not their property. They committed acts of vandalism, they committed acts of trespass. They were holding people against their will. They've been threatening and harassing Jewish students. I'm sorry, that's not a peaceful protest.
He has said the same thing about 4 times. In what? It's been like 10 minutes? He has said the same thing 4 times.
Right, these
the
people
that
are
were
not
being held
protesting
against
peacefully.
their will were Columbia students forced to stay inside the journalism school. You know, the NYPD literally poked their head in an open door and told the CUNY journalism students that if they left that building, they would be arrested. Columbia admin came to say that they should have the right to report, that they can't limit the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press. And the NYPD actually threatened Columbia administration. So the only people who were being held against their will were the Columbia students by the NYPD, and other students who were not part of the journalism school, part of the other schools or in their dorms, were also ordered to shelter in place by the Columbia administration. So everything you brought up, from the violence to people being held against their will, this is being perpetuated by the people in positions of power, by the administrations of these universities, and by the police department, who is being used to crush peaceful protests, who is being used to show up in riot gear and turn an otherwise peaceful situation into a riot. Never forget that in 1968, 150 protesters occupied the same exact hall that the students of Columbia were occupying as of last night and forced to come out of, Hamilton Hall, which they renamed Hinds Hall in honor of the 5-year-old Palestinian girl who was killed, who had to sit in a car with her family members for hours, while they decayed, while they rotted after being killed by the Israeli army. And she starved to death. Nobody was able to get to her So, you know,
Okay.
In 1968, Hamilton Hall was occupied by over 150 students protesting South African apartheid. And this kind of police violence wasn't used against them. And they are remembered in history as heroes. So continuing the long-held tradition of university activism, this is what they were doing
You've
at
made
Columbia.
your point.
This is what we were doing at CUNY.
Thank you. Good for
and all
you.
the encampments that we see
Nadine, I've
popping
only
up,
got
not just in the U.S., but all 7 continents.
Nadine, I have to
around the
move
world.
on because I have 4 other guests, but I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much. But joining me now is the independent presidential candidate Cornel West, who teaches at Columbia and joins some of the student protests. The Fox News contributor Kat Tim, former BLM supporter Javier De Russo of PragerU, who broke into a pro-Palestinian encampment at UCLA, and the Young Turks founder Cenk Uygur. Kat, I want to start with you because I know you've got a slight time constraint. So I want to start with you and just talk about one aspect of this, which is the whole issue of free speech in this debate. And we're going to get into the two sides part of it in a moment with the other guests. But from a free speech perspective, what is your take on what we're seeing here?
So I've been very open about this issue. I think there's been not quite enough focus on the free speech issue. I think that, for example, you could look at Texas Governor Abbott, who in 2019 was saying there has to be free speech on campuses. There has to be the First Amendment on campuses. Then on March 27th, he signed something that limits speech on campus, including constitutionally protected speech, including criticism of Israel's government. I think that what the Constitution says is very, very clear that even hate speech is free speech, right? So you can debate whether something is or is not hate speech. And the debate you just had with your last guest proves that there is some disagreement on that. And the main point is the government should not be the one deciding what is and is not. We have a spokesperson for the Indiana Police Department saying hate speech isn't free speech. Well, that just simply isn't true. And it's the whole idea of what it's always been, which is that you don't want the government to be in the position of deciding what speech is and is not allowed, because that is going to be dangerous for anyone, including Jewish students, right? I mean, there was no free speech, obviously, in Hitler's Germany, right? And saying that free speech, something is First Amendment protected free speech, is not that you don't have to say you agree with it. And you can totally bring up the fact that maybe it's been less consistent in terms of all of a sudden now a lot of these university presidents are super pro free speech when it comes to this, when they haven't been in the past. But to me, that's not going to cause me to be hypocritical on this issue. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I was in 2019. I was before 2019, and I still am today.
What if you are chanting intifada, given the history of intifadas between...
Okay, guys, you see, he does the same thing every show. He finished the first show with that girl, and he's talking about intifada the whole show. Now he's going to start the same thing, but now he's going to get Colonel West and Cenk Uygur very angry, and they're going to call him a racist. They're going to call him out. This is the first time they're going to, because he does this every time. He brings pro-Palestinian debaters only to use them as a prop and just do his fucking talking points that he's been given by his Zionist handlers, and that's it. Every one of them has a Zionist handler. Okay, now let's listen. The fireworks are going to start soon.
Israel and Palestine, twice in the last 30 years. We know what intifadas have been there. They've been violent uprisings with many people dying. And what if you chant from the river to the sea, which Jewish people believe absolutely means the eradication of Israel? I'm just asking
the
Kat,
First Amendment.
I will come to everybody else, but Kat has to go. So I want to just get this free speech part of the debate out of the way. Kat.
The First Amendment is actually clear on that, where you have to have a very, very, very specific exception where that would not be allowed. So, for example, a peaceful protest where people are marching and saying from the river to the sea is constitutionally protected speech. An incident where you were targeting a specific Jewish student and chanting that at that student where a protest had become violent, then that maybe would not be. But it's very, very narrow, and it's supposed to be very, very narrow, where there has to be, it has to be directed and likely to produce imminent action, and also true threats. Those are the only exceptions, which are very, very narrow. And the law is clear on this.
But if you have people, and we've seen pictures of them inside and outside campus, who appear to be supporting Hamas rhetoric, who are wearing maybe insignia relating to Hamas or Hezbollah or whatever, if you're brazenly supporting organizations, groups of people that are deemed to be terrorists by large swathes of the world, does that cross the line?
This is utter nonsense, Piers. Can I just answer the question?
Okay, check. Yeah.
You got genocide taking place. You got IDF terrorism taking place. You can't say a mumbling word about 12 universities that's been leveled to the ground. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of professors have been killed. Students have been killed. You're a journalist.
Yes.
Have you talked about the 112?
No, you don't
journalists who've
talk
been
about
killed,
that.
brother?
Yes,
No.
I have done.
You just
The
spread lies.
Intifada is very
Cornell,
dangerous.
I actually,
Treat the sister so unfairly.
Cornell, hang on. Cornell,
40,000 people are dead, 17,000 children are dead, and the most dangerous word in his show is the word intifada. Intifada, 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 intifada. I'm in a quandary. I don't know what the word intifada means. They got upset. Colonel West is a very, calm man. He's a Christian man, calm. I don't blame him if he got upset. He never mentions the dead Palestinians. All the time, even when I debate people on YouTube, they never want to acknowledge the mass murder of children, man. I can't believe that, man. It's unbelievable.